Blades of Fire is one of the most fun games I have played in 2025, and it's probably one of the most fun games that you'll probably never play. I haven't been able to put it down since I got a code, but let's be real. Apart from a few exceptions, a lot of people don't play AA games, and that kind of makes me sad because if you look back on this channel, I really like AA games, and there are so many talking points to bring up with Blades of Fire about how a smaller team can achieve such a fun, well-made game, how a developer can make little tweaks and changes and implement new things to make this stand out in a genre that is, if I'm being honest, completely saturated right now. I would consider this game a Souls-like, and when I think about Souls-likes that aren't made by From Software, they don't really do much to distinguish themselves, so then all you're doing is comparing them to one of the greatest developers of all time, and almost every single one of them will pale in comparison. But Blades of Fire does loads to set itself apart from Software, and I've just had so much fun playing it. So I started it up and I was instantly reminded of God of War 2018. You have the older, wiser protagonist, a younger sidekick, but the story and characters aren't great. I don't really want to focus on that in this video, but just take it that from the first 15-ish hours, the story setting doesn't really entice me, but it's the gameplay that hooked me so much. I took control of the character, walked around, I was like, yeah, this game feels pretty good. Then I got into a combat encounter and I was expecting either a light attack on square, heavy attack on triangle, or light attack on R1, heavy attack on R2. But no, instead, all of your attacks are directional. A low attack is X, a left attack is square, a right attack is circle, and a top attack is triangle. And this is the first unique thing the Blades of Fire does. The first couple of encounters were me trying to get used to the controls, L1 to dodge. It does happen in other games, but I was used to pressing circle, and my instant reaction when I didn't dodge with circle was to go into the settings menu and see if I could tweak it so that I could dodge with circle, but then I soon realised that no, that is one of the directional attacks, which is one of the best systems in this game. So I continued on, and after a couple of combat encounters, I really started to gel with it. I was walking up to enemies, locking onto them like any other game like this, and I noticed there was an outline around them. There was green, yellow, and red, and I was thinking, oh, this is pretty interesting, obviously indicating maybe their level, or maybe it's indicating if they're strong or weak against certain weapon types, which that is what it's doing. Interestingly, when you lock onto certain enemies, parts of their body will be red, parts of their bodies will be green, and it means that that specific part of the body is either strong or weak against whatever weapon you have. So an enemy could have gauntlets on their arm, which means that I can't use a bladed weapon because it just wouldn't deal any damage, but if I have a hammer, I can just smack them where the gauntlets are and it won't change anything. Or they won't wear a helmet, so then I can slash at them or stab them with a spear. And right there I thought to myself, yes, this is cool. And where it really, really cemented itself for me was, I went into a corridor, I was fighting an enemy. And let's take it back to Dark Souls. How many times have you played Dark Souls where you swung your weapon, it's smacked off a wall, and then you're just left there with your balls in your hand, the enemy's looking at you like, haha, I have a nice, easy way to attack you now, and then you're fecked. But here, I swung, my weapon hit off the wall, and I was like, crap. But then I realized, oh, if I just press triangle and hit an overhead attack, or X and hit a low attack, I will completely avoid the wall, and I'll be able to attack the enemy completely deliberately the way I want to. And I know in the Souls games, you just sort of get used to the weapons, you get used to the attack patterns, but the fact that regardless of what weapon I'm using, I can attack in any direction, it's just a little tweak. It really is a little tweak. This isn't the first game that's done. Obviously, you have games like For Honor or Kingdom Come Deliverance. There are so many games that have directional attacks, but from my knowledge, when it comes to Souls-like games, I don't think there is one that has directional attacks like this. Let me know in the comments down below, but that was the number one thing that struck me straight away, and I was like, yes, this is great. And what I love is as you go on, you're introduced to more enemies, more weapon types, and that's where this game really starts to shine. So then I was walking around exploring these levels, I was having a great time, and then eventually you learn how to craft weapons, and this is the other wrinkle in Blades of Fire that makes it just unique and really fun to play. So you go to the forge, you choose what weapon you want to craft, you put in different materials to upgrade different stats, and it's so deep. I love it so much. This game doesn't have a typical level up system. You don't pick up souls or XP and allocate them to strength and vitality and all this. No, instead, the only thing you are upgrading apart from health and stamina maximum and all that sort of stuff is your weapons. And I love how deep it is. You go in, you pick whatever type of weapon you want. There's loads to do, and you keep unlocking more as you go. You have great swords, you have scythes, you have spears, you have war hammers, you have war axes, you have dual axes, you have dual hammers. There's just so many different types to choose from. And you go in and you start tweaking with the different things. You can change the pommel, you can change the blade. If you put a really pointy blade on the top of your sword, it will reduce its durability and its blocking potential, but it means it deals more poke damage. And me, as an action RPG lover, where I love stats, I love seeing numbers go up, I love making new weapons and trying out different things, my eyes just open so wide. I was having a great time crafting all of these weapons and figuring out which ones I like. And even within that, each individual weapon has different movesets. So you could have a spear that has a stab moveset, but then if you press R2, it will have a slash moveset, so you can hit multiple enemies with one. And just going back to that example earlier of me in the corridor, if I'm in a corridor with my spear and there's a load of enemies, I would want to turn on the slashing ability so then I can slash and hit multiple enemies with one. But because I'm in a corridor, I can't. So then I have to swap to the stab maneuver, and then I start stabbing the enemies and slowly taking them out one by one. And it just brings me back to a word that I use on this channel so much, and that is expression. Since there are so many different types of weapons, and you can have 4 equipped at any time, and I believe 6 or 8 of them in your inventory that you could swap out at any time. It's amazing how well implemented this system is, where there are so many different types of enemies, and one is weak to this weapon type, one is weak to this weapon type, and even within it, you could have a spear, and the enemy would be resistant to slashing damage, but poke damage, stabbing damage, they wouldn't. So then you can just swap it out. Or there are other instances where your spear, your axe, and your sword are useless, so you whip out your great hammer and you just smack the enemy around, and the combat system just feels really satisfying to engage in.
One of the three kings. I'll be reading your notes on him, boy.
Now, this game is a Souls-like. I made a video about if Black Myth Wukong was a Souls-like. I think it is. It has replenishable healing items. It has a bonfire-like system where you rest to revive all the enemies, and there's a constant risk-reward of, will I revive the enemies and recharge my flasks, or will I just keep pushing with only one flask and see if I can get further so then I don't have to fight more enemies? There is also a punishment for death. Whatever weapon you have in your hand gets dropped when you die, and then you have to go back and pick it up, and it hasn't happened to me yet, and I didn't want to test it out because I don't want to lose any of my weapons, but I presume if I die while that weapon is on the ground, it disappears. So there is a rather large punishment for death, which is another wrinkle in Souls-like. And overall, this just feels like a Souls-like. But that's when you start to get into the conversation about refinement and how fine a game is or feels to play. Now, I've already touched on it, that this combat system feels amazing. The enemies just get obliterated with your hammer, they get slashed. It's a really nice feeling combat system, especially against the smaller enemies. Now, there's not too much of an emphasis on boss fights in this game. I'm 15-20 hours in, and I fought maybe four bosses, maybe, and some of them where I had to kill 3 of the same boss in an area, so I'm counting them as one boss. But there's not a massive emphasis on them, but the level design is really Soulsian, if we're gonna use that as a term. If you played No Rest for the Wicked, that has very Soulsian level design, labyrinthian things layer on top of each other, there's shortcuts, and Blades of Fire is the exact same, but it's not as fine as Dark Souls, just like Black Myth Wukong was. Now, I'm not a massive Black Myth fan, I think it's a good game, but I don't understand the crazy hype that people had for Black Myth last year. And the problem with the level design that I want to highlight is just the sheer amount of ways to go. It can feel extremely overwhelming. At points, it has been confusing as I've been playing the game. There was 2 specific points that I won't get into because I don't want to spoil them, but there was 2 specific points where I was walking around like a headless chicken for 20 minutes, only to figure out that it's actually a single rope that I have to climb or a ladder that was hidden behind something. And I think that fineness, if that's even a word in level design, is probably the biggest differentiating factor. When you play any From Software game, you do have multiple paths to take, but I always found that it was really easy to distinguish where you can and can't go, and where is the main path and where is the optional side path. And you might only have 2 or 3 different ways to go. But when you go to the first starting area in Blades of Fire, there's just so many different ways to go. There's crack through walls to go. There's 3 or 4 different paths. You can go up, down, left, right, and then you go in here, and then you go down a ladder, which will open a shortcut back. And it's just not as fine in that sense. And then when you get onto the combat, the single enemy combat and even the multi-enemy combat against the small enemies feels brilliant. I love it so much. But the boss fights so far have been extremely underwhelming. And it's for a few reasons. One, a lot of their attack patterns are very similar. They have some form of a melee attack. They usually have some form of a lunge attack where they launch themselves at you. And then they have this magic ability that somehow gets shot out onto the ground and it either goes straight for you or it'll move in a zigzag path and you have to dodge it. But they all feel very similar. They look different. They technically have different attacks. But if you actually just compare them side by side, and I'm not sure what I will and won't show since I don't want to spoil any of these, they're just very similar, and I really started to notice the pattern even after only 15 hours. And then dodging against the single enemies, it's easy. You have iframes. You can either dodge or double tap dodge to roll out of the way. But with the big bosses, their slashes with their massive swords are so large that I actually struggled to dodge a lot of them. Even sometimes if you double dodge backwards, they can still catch you. And then if you dodge sideways on a slash, they will almost always get you. Even if you double dodge, they will almost always get you with the end of their swing. And sometimes it even happens where they will swing their sword and I will dodge through it, but because their attack is so long, it actually almost comes behind them where I am and still hits me. So it's just that little bit of refinement that I feel that this game, while I do still think it's a Souls-like, it's not as fine as the amazing Souls-like, so it sort of fits in that very typical action RPG where I feel where if a game is an straight up action RPG and not a Souls-like, they don't need to be as fine because they're not as punishing. Now this game is nowhere near as hard as any Souls-like game I've played. It's definitely one of the easier ones. I'm playing it on normal difficulty. I have died a fair bit, but it's definitely one of the easier ones. And there is 3 different difficulties. There's an easier one and a harder one, which is great for people that would like to either play harder or easier, and I do like to see that. And there's one more elephant in the room that I want to address. So I've put about 15 to 20 hours into this game as of recording this video. I will probably play more before the game comes out. I might get to the 25-ish mark, but just the way work and schedule works out, I sort of have to make the video now. And the developers have said that this game is in and around 60 to 80 hours long, which, to be honest, as much as I'm loving this game, I do genuinely adore it and I can't stop playing it. If this game is 60 or 80 hours long, I'd be like, I'm not sure if I could put that much time into it. Now, we'll see. Now, we always have to consider the dev maths behind all this. Almost always when developers say a game is X amount of hours long, you can always take something off. So if they say it's 60 to 80 hours, let's say it's actually more like 40 to 60, okay? Even if I have another 20 more hours into this game, which probably would be about correct if I'm being honest. I'm not sure if that was the best play. I feel like as much as I love this game, and I'm having a great time, and I do actually think it's better than Black Myth Wukong. I don't usually like comparing games too much in videos unless that's the whole point of the videos, but I'm definitely enjoying this more than Black Myth Wukong. It's more up my alley. But Black Myth Wukong and Blades of Fire definitely suffer from a lot of the same problems of somewhat confusing and convoluted level design that kind of gets in the way sometimes. A lot of the time it's fine, but sometimes it's annoying. But the problem that I would be facing with Blades of Fire, assuming this game is double or maybe even triple the amount of time I've already put in it, is that there are very few games that deserve to be that long and very few games that need that much time. I find that with AA games, a big problem with them is that refinement where, you know the way you always hear editors talk about, like, you have to kill your babies, essentially. I've heard this about YouTube videos, about books, whatever you are creating. There will be certain things in it, and there will definitely, ironically, be certain parts of this video that I probably could have cut out, and the video would have been just as good, if not better. But there are certain things that you could cut out that would make the experience overall better. It would make it shorter, more condensed, and then it also sort of feels like it's not running out of steam or it's not wasting your time. I'm going to be totally honest. If this game is 60 hours long, I'm not sure if it could hold my attention for that amount of time. I'm not going out sending a complete judgment on it because I haven't beaten it yet. I will try my hardest to beat it. But it's the same last year. Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden came out, and if I remember correctly, that game was in and around the 20 to 25 hour mark. But there was definitely a bit of cutting that could have been done there, and it would have made the experience way better. If it was a 15 to 20 hour long game or a 12 to 18 hour long game, it would have been a totally different experience. Whereas when you're pushing the 20 plus hour mark, there has to be something in there that wants to keep your attention. So I will keep going. I'm on the second area, and as I said, I love this game. It really is a great example of what AA games can do. And that includes the flaws like the game maybe being too long and the story basically being non-existent, the character development being almost completely non-existent as well. But when it comes to AA games, there is a core there that if you enjoy that core, you will love it. And I think that's what happened with me and Blades of Fire. I love that core of exploring the levels, fighting different enemies with different weapons, figuring out what they're strong and weak against, crafting different weapons so that in the next area I will cover all the bases of I need a hammer, I need a twin axe, I need daggers, I need this, that, and the other, so then I can perfectly craft my character. And I had a great time with it. I will continue to play it. So let me know if you are interested in Blades of Fire. There is a demo out there. And if you've enjoyed this rambling all about RPGs, all this great stuff, please subscribe to the channel because I'm trying to get to 1 million subscribers by next week. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.